it- it's just a simplified version of the ethics form. Basically, you put your student's name. Here, you just put my name. And at some point, I'm going to approve all of them anyway. So once, well, of course, unless you're doing something seriously dangerous, right? So basically, so communicate the research aims and objective details of the participants, obtain evidence of their permission. So things that you intend to do or intend to cover during that. You don't necessarily have to attach all these copies and then the date. I'll probably upload, create a link on the Moodle page for you to submit to, okay? All right, I'm gonna get kicked out of the classroom in a second. So just bear with me whilst I kick myself out. So on the consent form, just basically yes and no, tick, 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 and you're done as well. And you can also upload that one. Is this helpful?
Yes. Where we have to upload this?
Okay. And also, of course, the consent form, you're going to get quite a lot. The main thing you need is the ethics, right? You're going to get quite a lot of consent form. You can attach it as an appendix, but even that, I don't want it unless you save them as images for yourself, keep for yourself. At least you upload only one sample consent form that you got it. It's okay. Just in case someone raises issues later, then you can say that you had your consent. You know what I mean? The only reason why I don't want to append the consent form to your paper itself is that it's going to increase the similarity rate. Does that make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, or you can just save them as JPEG, and then add them to your work.
So does that mean we can use this one you created for us?
That's the point of creating for you, to make your life easier, so you can focus on the actual report. So the ethics form is the template, right, for you to follow to complete, right? It's just you copy and paste content across. I mean, I can show you again, but you know where it is. If you can't find it, for example, and you also go into this week's or week 6, I'm fine. I hope I put it in the right week. Right. Otherwise, I have to move them. Yeah, if you go to this week's, I've also put them there for you. So besides it being in the assessment, I've also put it in the content for this week. All right. I'm not sure who asked, but the person that asked, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Right. Okay. And also, I've put most of the recordings, I believe all the recordings, but hopefully all of them. Otherwise, most of them are available to you. The only thing that I'll probably point out is that where I stop the recording and continue again, mostly it puts the multiple recordings together. So like basically you need to finish watching one and it will play the next one that follows it. Like, I'm not sure if this one will, yeah, like this one also. Hello, see faces. Okay, right. So far, so good then. Let's sort out attendance. I really want to sort out attendance in a different way. Bear with me and I'll switch off the screen and come back. We've covered a lot of things about qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods, surveys, briefly about them as well. We've covered action research as well. And the last session, of course, we've talked a lot about proposal and other things. And even the whole structure of your research paper, we looked into different research papers. And also we finally looked at ethics and consent forms. Does all of these ring bells to you? Is that yes or no? It's so quiet.
Yes.
All right. Can I confirm first? Do you have any question for me before we carry on? Otherwise, if one person said no, I'm more than happy to start covering things. Any question for me relating to things we've previously talked about? Good. I think the answer is no then. Silence is golden. So let me see if I can get this up in terms. I think it's still recognizing multiple screens, which is not what we like because that wouldn't allow me to highlight things which I don't like. Yeah, we'll fix it anyway. Right, so I'm interested in alternative methods that you use to collect your data, right? So I do say collect your data because in the end, that's what your methodology is about. It's about the process which we've used to design your research in such a way that you collect valid data and then you want to present valid results that answers your research question, right? So it sort of ties in all the pieces together. And then people say, I mean, we are in the 21st century, right? You don't necessarily have to stick to the very traditional methods of doing things. Let's say you don't necessarily have to say you go around two people, see them face to face with a sheet of paper in your hand to collect the data from them. And you're thinking, okay, what are some of the going to do this? I'll stop sharing the screen now so we can have a conversation before we start jumping into slides and presentation. See, yes, everybody can hear me, which is a good thing. Turn on your camera if you want. I'm happy to turn off the recording if that helps. And also, but then we want to have a general conversation. What are some of the methods or some of the alternative approaches that you can think of as far as your data collection is concerned, or your methods that you can actually use to design your system? And since Benny just put off his camera, I'll call Benny.
Actually, just want to
Emmanuel.
go to, yeah, I just want to go to the toilet. That's it.
Come on, I've recorded all of this. Don't record. Right. So I put something in the chat window for you. I'm going to repost it. And if you want to read about it, you can read about it. I'm not going to ask you to read about it right now, but you can read about it a bit later on as we go with the presentation. Right. So it was just predefining qualitative methods. There's another link I will share with you. Let me see if I can highlight. I'll share that with you also later on. It wouldn't allow me to highlight. There's going to be lots of fancy tests and all those kind of things. I should really change the slide, but at some point, the key thing is what we discuss from it or what we learn from it. And at some point, if people want, I'll present you with a much better version of it. Okay, so it's just qualitative approach, basically qualitative talking to people. And we noticed when we were discussing, actually, besides the fact that sending out online surveys and other things, we talked about doing things via like video and other things as well. So we've had quite an extensive chat about qualitative, quantitative already. And basically, we just want to look at it from slightly different perspective. Okay, so talking about qualitative can be magnified by choosing the right imaginative methodology and also thinking outside the box. We're thinking out of the box thinking, really, which means I'm not that strict with regards to what method you use in terms of getting the right data. Okay, so thinking a bit outside the box with a little of that redefines what we collect and analyze as data and engage with the participants, which is the approach at which we engage with our participants, right? Well, you can have a look at this book and also you can look more into it about creative thinking and other things, but I can read through the key points in there. So I've always been interested in creative research. Have I? I think I am as a person, but that's somebody else's perspective as well. And people talk about augmented reality these days. I mean, there are so many tools that I can think of, and it's up to you about whether you can use them to help you collect data. And actually, people do offloaded data collection as well, where they just use only pen and paper. That doesn't mean there's not much creativity in there. And actually, it takes a lot of creative thinking to take something that you normally take on paper, online, or using technology to do it with just paper, pen and paper alone. And normally that involves creating activities for people and then observing what is happening and using the results created from that activity as well. So don't think only technology when we talk about creative thinking. Anyway, right, so something other than the traditional methods, and basically you're augmenting or adding them to the traditional method. You can use variety of methods, things like photos, fictionalization, writing research, drama, presentation of findings. And some people, if you may know, sometimes I may give you feedback instead of written feedback. I'll put audio feedback. So some people, I think some research journals now have started emerging where they ask you to actually present a video. So you talk about your research, and then that's reviewed. I received an email from one recently as well, and also you can actually present your findings that way. Even though I'm asking you to present, let's say, research paper, for example. Someone may present a research paper, but still add a link to a video recording explaining what the paper is about, what the key findings is, such as one of the videos we watched when we looked at writing, I think it was action research, where they actually demonstrated the kids in the classroom and everything. Right, so there are various methods, various solutions that you can think of. I like this video because it's like quantitative but qualitative, and they give birth to this research method. So you can have multi-layered in there. That's just my own personal, I think, personal like for this, but what's on this particular slides, right? So you can art-based research, mostly visual. I don't think we have any visual art, arts in the group, but you can, they have non-textual based research findings. So it means that it's not necessarily research papers, sometimes photographs that have been captured. People use blogs, but ideally for academic writing, we do not go much into blogs and other things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't capture a real life photographs that illustrate your idea better and include them in your research. Okay, so making use of technology, we talked about social media, apps, computer video games. I've talked about videos in general. Gamification is one thing that has crept into various fields. So gamification in various fields simply means that something that you normally take serious and everything, you just really want to create a fun aspect of it. But the game side of it is really, games have to do with reward. You know, the more you play, the more you get marks, or the more you get some levels, and then you move to another level, then the level of difficulty. So it's just applying the game concepts actually in the academic research concept. Can I double check? Are we okay up to this point so far? Was that yes, Milo, or somebody?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So I'm not talking too fast or anything, and you can hear me. That makes me happy, right? So then we've talked about the mixed research method. So in this case, you can combine qualitative, quantitative, or both, and also you can have different types of quantitatives combined as well, and then all different approaches of qualitatives combined. So you can be doing both surveys and interviews combined, but it's just put them in phases. So I did mention a while back what I did for my action research, for example. There was a layer of qualitative data. So actually right at the beginning of the class, I sent out questionnaires to students in class to evaluate the course. 6 weeks into it, there was another questionnaire. Then, of course, this was alongside the action that's being done. So the first layer, we have something that's been done in terms of what the student perception are. And then the second layer was the action that was being done, of course, combining that with previous reflection. So even before that reflection has happened as well. And I'm just taking the example of something that we talked about with the early weeks, which had to do with student engagement for courses that are taught to multidisciplinary group of students, similar to the student group that we've got in this particular class. So we have several layers of different methods that are combining to work together. Then, of course, even the action research in the following year, there was a stage 2 of that action research that was conducted. Okay, so we can have transformative research framework in terms of having participatory action research, something we've talked about feminist design, design-based research, things that have to do with transforming the society or environment that we live in, making things happen. Right. Please ask anytime or stop me anytime if you have a question. So people can keep diaries for their research. Right after this, please remind me, I'll send you all the links that are available in there. So some people could, you can create even an unlisted YouTube video log. And if you want, you can create one that is also listed and made public. One more thing I need to share with you, I will pause right. Right, so you can keep diaries, you can use Kaltura or I think it's video.northampton.ac.uk to keep diaries for your research. We have, something like if you've watched Avatar, the way the guy was keeping audio recordings of audio and video, actually, recordings of the research that was happening on the other planet, for example. You can also get participants to keep their own diary, so it depends on the nature of the research, or you can get participants to record themselves and then send to you if you plan to do something like you can ask the questions for prompts and they can answer the questions and then send back to you. There are various approaches that you can use, and as far as resources to help you is concerned, I'll share some of them for you. I mean, example of football diary and other things, anyway, I can sort of send this to you much later on if they need be. I think the apps, papers and other things. Right, okay. So you can use apps for data collections. We've talked about that. In real time, clearest benefits of using smartphone is that participants can be spontaneous anyway. I think all these sort of things are things that we kind of familiar with. But yeah. Photos, visual approach to examining everyday social phenomena. I'm using photos, photo diaries. I would say you can keep photo diaries and other things. There seem to be an audio recording on there, which I'm not going to take. But what I really want to highlight on as far as this slide is concerned, earlier I mentioned people can use mind maps, people can use visual maps and visual connections of things as well. I mean, regardless of whatever is on that side, it's that visual relationship that sometimes actually makes research a lot more interesting. And it's quite interesting that you find these sort of things in, I'll say, CID or detective related movies where they have who the top guy they're trying to catch is concerned, and then who are the people that are linking to it. The same way, it's a form of research, really, to find out what data relates to what and how you can create the relationship between the data. It's slightly different from what the slide itself actually says. You can use photo things and visual stuff to help you. Right. Some examples in terms of in-class stuff, working with people. So we've talked about focus groups and focus group that we have mentioned in previous session. Sample arts, I think that's more creative stuff that we can think of. Drawings, basically, physical drawing, table drawing, annotations. And one of the interesting bits about annotation is actually using pictures and annotating content on the pictures. There are some tools at the bottom there that will give you links to various options that you can use. Some things like some people can actually collect data in classrooms or even online or with some participants where they just give them an image and say, just target with whatever you feel in relation to what it may say. And of course, it depends on the nature of your research, right? So we mentioned briefly about narrative mapping or putting things that relates to certain aspects. And especially when you are working with participants in a live setting, sometimes you can have like sketch notes taking. If we were in class and I asked you a question about something and I just say, I don't know, use notepads to actually notepad sticky notes, right? To give your response and then put them together in an organized manner. We can still use it to collect data, for example. There are so many options that can be used for labeling images or collecting data and other things, self-portrait and all these things. Okay, sculpting, let's use things that are relevant to us. If you feel I'm skipping too much, let me know. I'm just focusing on the key things that we need. Right, and if, let's say, let me check if I can find a file for you. So key things about, anyway, openness to what happens. You can, I'll say, I'll just jump away from this a little bit and I'll say we started off by thinking, okay, what are some of the creative ways that we can use to record to get the data? And we were still thinking, all right, there are options that we can use, or qualitative, quantitative. We're still thinking a bit more traditional as well. Just because, especially when you are limited by word count, or especially when you are limited by, saying, the academic setting, and we're telling you, you need to write what your research paradigm is, or you need to explain why qualitative or quantitative or mixed method is the best method to use. And sometimes you feel so limited that you don't feel like thinking outside the box. But how, one, you are aware that, okay, Michael is all right, I can have these traditional things, show that I'm aware of the theories and other things, and I can add a bit more to it. So what are the options that I have? I feel that as far as this data is concerned, maybe I can present it visually, maybe I can make use of certain things. So what are some of the things I have not considered? One, how do I really feel about things? What are some of the tools that I've learned from different fields that I can make use on here? I mean, we mentioned gamification. So if I'm a programmer that can actually gamify things and send to my participants, instead of them physically and just simply taking papers and other things, they can actually do something. And we're thinking, okay, what are some of the examples I can use to you personally? So I'm thinking about a way that we can show unconscious bias. Unconscious bias is something, has to do with, the endemic nature of things. Maybe I'm so used to standing and eating, for example. I'm so used to standing and eating that when I see people who sit and eat, automatically I keep my distance from them because I think maybe they're awkward or weird. It's just an example. The same way unconscious bias can lead to so many stereotypes as far as how people deal with others are concerned, especially when it comes to equality, diversity, and inclusion, for example. So I say, right, what if I want to create a research platform that I can use to test unconscious bias in people, but at the same time, I want to use this as an action thing where I used to train people about their own unconscious bias and how much or how they can actually improve themselves by getting away from stereotypes and treating people with the right equality and or equity that they need. So I say, all right, I can just either ask them questions or I can just either let them and give them training. What if I can create a real scenario, right? And then immerse the people there, which it can be just a game. Let them play the game. And in the process of playing the game, it will review how they react, depending on how they react in that environment. It will review their own unconscious bias to themselves. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. It's just a game. There's gamification in there. There is immersion. There is the bit of the training. And I'm like, oh, that goes beyond anything other thing I could have thought of as far as the traditional methods are concerned. Then I'm like thinking, okay, can I still collect my data in a way that I will still have valid data? And the answer is yes. Oh, I can do that. All right, then I'm going to do that, because what I will do is that whilst they are playing the games, I'll be collecting the data on the side. So whilst they are playing the games, I'll be doing my analysis, I'll be testing them, and I'll see how things really go. And I'm like, okay, fine. That means that the timeline is slightly different. Can I actually be present while they're playing the game without actually interfering as well? So by the creative thinking solution in there, it opens up to a lot of opportunities for myself as far as research and analysis is concerned. Does this make sense to us so far?
Yes.
Good. So we've talked through some of these things in terms of, well, mind mapping and other stuff. We've talked about focus groups. It's interesting. I like active focus group. Is quite interesting. The drama part in there, instead of having them to talk, you put them in a setting and see how they react and other things. Quite similar to what I have talked about as far as the unconscious bias research is concerned. I have done this before, and let me see if I can find that work as well. Just bear with me. Hopefully I can find. So yeah, I was excited. I spent a lot of time. I've designed my questionnaire. I've made it so visual, exciting, looks creative to me. It was my first time. And then one of the participants was like, yeah, what if the emoji actually introduces bias? I was like, what? I said, what if the emoji introduces bias? I'm like, what? So yeah, people may be attracted to a particular emoji, like the happy emoji. They may not like the other emoji. So because they've seen a happy emoji, they go with a happy emoji throughout rather than answering your question. And I have not thought about it that when I was like, actually, I should do a research that finds out whether data collected in such a creative way with emojis would have an impact on things. Midan, welcome back. I think I did your attendance, if that's what you are asking. But I've recorded some sessions of this session too, and I'm recording what we are talking about now. So that's an interesting aspect as well. And as far as emojis are concerned, we've already talked about collecting via LinkedIn and using emojis. People are doing it, but it's interesting. I don't know yet until I do that particular research. I really don't know yet whether the emoji had an impact on the data I collected as far as when it came to the survey that I sent out to people to respond to is concerned. And I think that was also another mixed method as well. So what I did for that particular study, I sent out survey questionnaire to people online to get their views about various advertisements and other things. And also after what people did online, I also did some eye tracking things with people face to face, and people also told me about their views about similar images. Then I'll combine those ones as well. So it still involves some experiments, actual experimental setup with eye tracking and other things. Anyway, so continuing, and we are actually almost done in terms of options. The rest is just going to be various options that I'm just going to use only the visual aids in there to show you or to talk about what is happening on these slides, right? So because my focus is on other alternative ways. Right, internet-mediated research, basically Boothinker and other things. Mentimeter is something you would want to look into. So these are other options. Some options, you want to look at Mentimeter, you can use Mentimeter, like right now, I can get you, can you see my screen? I'm not sure whether you can see. Can you see the presentation, please? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Good. So you can look into these softwares or these tools that can give you options as well. I've used Mentimeter. I think the free version was limited to also number of questions, so number of people that can participate as well. But Mentimeter is an interesting tool. So basically what I like about it, the other options, of course, you can put a question up, and then people can enter their answers or enter some words, and then it will automatically collect a word cloud for you. So this was an example that somebody else for a different work. So basically you send out the questions and people put in. So the larger or the bigger the word in the word cloud, the more it means that the more people, the number of people who selected that word or that puts that particular word in response. So as far as like straightforwardness is concerned, it means that more people want something that is straightforward, for example. So it's also a way of collecting the data and visualizing the data and presenting the data back. It will need to go along with some tests or some form of the traditional ways to make your work a bit stronger, right? So there are other things as well that you can use. The university gives the online survey tools. I recently discovered the online surveys instead of Survey Monkeys. I'm not sure whether by default for this particular one, I'm not particularly sure whether by default you all have access to, or whether you can use your university details to log in. I think you may have to create an account, or you may have to make a special case for it to be used created for you. But I'm not 100% sure on that particular one, but you can try it on your own. I'll make the link also available to you in this as well. So you can use Google Forms, of course, also free. We've already talked about Mentally earlier on, making use of Google Scholar for the literature search. We've done that, Siri Author and for transcribing. I've also mentioned Teams for transcribing. And also I've mentioned, Zoom for transcribing as well. Doing thematic coding for analysis, you will have NVivo. The university gives you access to NVivo software that you can make use of as well using your login details. Otherwise, you talk to the IT services to find out whether you can have access to NVivo, but most of the library computers have it installed on them, so you can make use of it as well. Right, we have mentioned social media, Twitter and other things earlier on. Secondary data, Adobe mentioned right at the beginning, social media data analysis and other things. So making use of Canvas, representing things visually. Most of you would do this when it comes to creating posters and other things. And I've given you a separate example of poster representation, and some people may use mosaics and all these other resources. I think I personally feel that I've covered the most important or the key things. The rest, clay, other modeling options. I think the rest are mostly sort of repetitions of things that we have already gone through. And by all means, you can do these further readings. So I will stop the recording here. So we have